I thought I would try to take away some of the confusion that we have when we use the insert effect contours. If you have selected this one, insert effect contour, what I've been finding is a lot of people are confused with the fact that, let me just select it again, when they say they want to just make a contour around the entire design, but they end up with a bunch of circles everywhere or contours everywhere, and they're overlapping, and it's just a mess. And the same thing happens with the plate. So you may not think your plate is overlapping and whatnot, but it is. And if I show you quickly what I mean, maybe I'm making a patch, I would just like go to insert effect, contour, inflated, say 3 mils, ignore cavity and click OK. Stitch length, I'll leave it 2.5. And this is the mess that you get. And they're overlapping, and it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't want that. And so you can see where they're overlapping, and if you did the same thing, say with, if I selected it, oops, it is selected, insert, effect, plate, and did the 3 mils, ignore cavity. I'll just go with fill number 2, and I'll just leave everything. Okay, so you think that it's fine and nothing's overlapping, but they are, and you're going to have a lot of hard stitches here, here, you know. If you go into stitches view, you can see where they're overlapping here, and you don't want that. So here's the quick trick. Let me go back. I'll go back into 3D. So you have your object selected and you copy and paste it. Control C, Control V. Select that pasted object and look down in the items window and you see all the jumps. That is the problem, having all those jumps. So instead of deleting every jump, right click, delete item, instead of doing it that way, it would take way too long. You can see how many there are. You just right click on the object, insert, remove codes, remove all floating jumps, and replace with running, and click OK. And so, you see all these connection stitches, which is fine. This is just a tool. When we do our contour this time, you might want to do a little tweaking like this one up here. If I zoom in, we might want to move that one down because it may not contour as perfectly on, both sides. So we'll go into stitches view real quick. I'll zoom in. Let me just make that color a little darker so I could see it. And we'll go ahead and we'll hide the original up here. All the colors, right click, hide all colors. We'll click down here and we'll go to our points editing mode. Click that, click once, draw a box. Now you have to find where the beginning of this is. So the arrow is pointing to the left, so the beginning is somewhere over here. Sometimes that can be a bit of a problem, but if I zoom in, and sometimes it's easier to see where it's going. So it's going here, it looks like. maybe not. Looks like it's going to there. So if I click on points editing mode again, and click on that, and I have to go backwards, so I'll hold shift and then tab, shift tab. So that obviously wasn't it. Well, maybe not. It's going back on there. I'm just keep hitting shift tab. I'm holding down the shift button and hitting tab. Okay. So there it did go back to here. So if I zoom out, you'll see that's what we want. So we'll right click, insert, and let me zoom out again. And so I just want to move that down out of the way, just so it looks like this side. So that's good. I'll hit the select button again. I'll go into 3D just so we can see. So everything else kind of looks consistent. This might have to be moved, but we'll just let it go for right now. Let me just make a point here. You can see all the jumps are gone. I used to think that you had to make it all one color for this to work, but you don't. As long as the jumps are gone, you're fine. So with this tool type object selected, we'll just go to Insert, Effect, Contour, 3 mils, ignore cavity, and click OK. That's fine. I'll just leave it at 2.5. You could go to 2. And there it is. It looks pretty consistent. You can see down here, because of this connection not being moved, it's not the same as this side. And you know, you can go ahead and go into it and move it again, but you really want to take this whole outline, whoops, let me zoom out. You really want to take this whole outline into Studio, because your stitches, they may seem like they're, you know, at 2.0, but really, if I go into Stitches View and view stitch points, you can see they're not all 2.0. These are a little bit shorter than these. And these are shorter. And yes, they're going around a curve, and you might think, oh, well, that's okay, but you can get this to look a lot better if you bring it into Studio. So I'll just show you real quick how we do that. I go into 3D. Let me just make it a different color. And I'll just save it in case I lose it. And the original is still here, but we'll just take this one, and I'm going to take the tool into Studio, not the original. I just don't want the original to be changed at all. Sometimes when you bring something into Studio and bring it back, it adds tie-offs and so on that you may not have wanted added. So I'll just bring these two in. So I just select the one, hold Control, select the other, right-click, edit stitch file in Studio. And then once you're in Studio, you may not see your design right away, so you can just do Control A and then the magnifier, zoom to selected object, and there it is. But you still might want to see your grid, so I would go into Edit, Preferences, Grid, just change your grid to something different and hit Apply. And if it's still not showing, you can click on your hoop and you can see that the hoop is populating here at 20 by 20, which is way too small for this design. So if you just click on hoop and go to your hoop that you want to use, I usually use my M1 hoop, and click apply, then everything is showing. The grid is showing and everything. And then even if that doesn't work, let me just X out and right click, edit stitch file in Studio again. And right away, if you go to hoop and change your hoop before you change anything else, M1, apply, Control A, bring into view, edit, preferences, grid, apply, and there it is. I'll zoom out, there's my hoop, and so on. So either order, you know, I either did the hoop first or I did the edit preferences first, one or the other. But getting the hoop to be the right size is kind of the key. But at any rate, there's your design, and you have all manual stitches. So I'll select just the outline, and I'll go to Convert Manual Stitches to Connection Stitches. So now they're all connection stitches. And while it's still selected, we go to Convert Connection to Outline. So we're changing those connection stitches to outline stitches. Now they're outlines. And, you know, we can go into parameters and give them whatever parameters we want. And I'll just change them both to, say, 2.5 stitch length. Click Apply. OK. If I go into 3D, you know, they're all consistent, but we'd still probably want to edit this down here and so on. The other thing you want to do when you do go into the edit screen now, you have way too many nodes. So you want to reduce your nodes number before you start editing. So just X out of that. Click on the outline. Go to Transform, Reduce Nodes Number. Usually a 10 will not change the shape too much. So you'll click Check. And it did smooth it out a bit. Now when we click on Edit, we have less nodes. But you'd still want to edit this. And so let's just click the check mark for a minute. So I'm in 3D, and the reason why these don't look like they're 3D is because we didn't generate them. Let me just save this real quick. Floral test. And, you know, we could generate these. We don't have to, but let's just go out of 3D, go into vector view so we could see our grid. And there are several ways now, if I select the outline, that you can edit this outline. You could click Edit and come down here to this node, right click, Insert so that it's square. And we see it's starting up here at the top. We could just split it since this is symmetrical. And we could just edit the one side. Or we can edit the other side, whichever side is better. The right side is probably better because it's already done down here. But at any rate, so you'd click Edit, and my plus sign on my keyboard, I would just delete that, delete that. I would delete those. Probably messed that up a little. You just want to have a round node on a curve. Delete that. That one looks fine. I'll just leave it. I guess I'll leave that. Delete that. I'll delete that one too. And I'm just going to leave that as is. I could snap to grid now because my grid is showing. Remember, if you, and I'll snap this, oops, snap to grid up here, and I'll snap this to the grid. I guess I'll pull down a guideline. It's kind of right by the grid, so I'd have to zoom in if I wanted to snap to guideline now instead of the grid. I'll just do that. This is pointing this way to the left, so right click outside a little to line to get rid of that. And that looks good. And so with that selected now, I could just come over here, see if I hover, duplicate and mirror horizontally. And so it just duplicated it on the other side. And then I'll just hit the check mark and get rid of this one. And so now it's perfectly symmetrical and you're done. So now when you hit generate, it should still have the same parameters, which it does. And go into 3D. If you don't want it a single stitch, say you want a double stitch, just have it selected and go to transform, create backward path, right click, insert after, and now you have a backward path, so it's doubled up. You could have done a triple bean, but sometimes this is better because the first stitch will go around all the way around and you'll have it down nice and tight in one stitch and then let it do a backward path. Now these curves, I was just looking at that curve, you know, 2.5 might not have been small enough for that curve. So let me just see it. It looks like it's a nice curve. So maybe I want to select them both and go to a 2.0. That made it a little better. So now you have your outline and it's nice and tight. Sometimes you don't want it real tight. Sometimes you want it to be, you know, farther away, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you want one that's tight, maybe for like a tack down, and then you might want another one for, you know, that's going to end up being your satin and so on and so on. Now from here, you could take one of these and you could Control C, Control V, turn it a different color. You could expand it from here. Sometimes that does introduce, we'd have to go, if we want another 3 mils, we'd have to go 6, because in Studio you have to double it. And it does introduce sometimes little errors, you know, where it's tight, but that's easily fixed. Edit, just delete them. Let me do that again. Actually, the best thing to do, let me Control C, is to copy and paste it. Control C, Control V, make that one different color, go back to the pink, edit, snap to object edges, and then so it's snapping to the previous this will snap to the previous. Same thing over here. Delete. And there you go. And yeah, you can get rid of those points and so on to get rid of the green. Okay, so that didn't attach up there. So let's go into vector view, and that's the grid. So, you know, I guess you could snap to grid instead of object edges. You could just kind of wing it without copying and pasting. And this one, right click, close edges, and there you go. And you could keep, you know, perfecting it. You could make this whole line a little bit better just by deleting all the square nodes probably, and snap to object edges if you wanted. There's nothing copy and pasted, so forgot. Control C, Control V. But you probably wouldn't have wanted to snap to anything, but you can. So now edit the pink again, snap to object edges. You know, if you felt like sliding it around and seeing where it looks the best. And same thing over here. And you can make sure they're both in the same plane. Snap to grid. So it's snapping to the grid and the object edge. So now they're exactly the same. So you could keep doing that and really make this perfect. You know, there's a little point there. You could go in and do it all with that as well. But, and then that could be like a satin. So you can convert that to either an applique or a satin or whatever. There's just so many options. 3.0, apply, okay, and save it. So, and then when you compile and bring it back into Studio or into Editor, I'll just cancel the saving for right now. Here it is, but this is your original. So you kind of want to keep the original. So separate that outline, separate the pink, and then just get rid of this one because you brought it back in from Studio, and then right click, show all colors, and there it is. So obviously you would want to put these in the order that you need them for your patch or your applique or whatever. And I didn't go into all the detail of making all of that. I just wanted to show you how you can make things really pretty. So I hope this was helpful for everyone. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to contact me at my website, WeQuiltStudio.com, or on Facebook, Lisa WeQuilt. And feel free to join my Patreon community where we are just going to have lots of fun and support each other and help each other and share our love for embroidery and sewing. Thanks a lot.